Number 1.
Sharonzielinski Mccully, age 25, was last seen in Austin, Texas, on December 11, 1984. The last verified sighting of her was around lunchtime when she had met her husband, John, for lunch. After dropping John back off at work at 1:40 p.m., she was seen driving eastbound on Howard Lane toward Interstate 35, planning to go Christmas shopping. She was driving a white 1965 Volkswagen Bug with an orange hood. There were bits and pieces of information that surfaced that could have somewhat tracked her movements in the time after she left her lunch date. Someone saw her car near Barton Creek Square in Austin. Descriptions on some sites state that it was seen in the area that is now Barton Creek Square, however Wikipedia states that Barton Creek Square existed at the time it had opened in 1980. It is a shopping mall, so it would make sense that she would have gone there of her own accord since she was known to have been Christmas shopping that day. I do not know if her car was seen parked or moving, or if she was in it at the time. There was also a sighting of her car on Bee Cave Road again, no idea if the car was parked or moving. There weren't any shopping malls in that vicinity as far as I can tell. It's also unclear whether this sighting was before or after the Barton Creek Square sighting. Her car was ultimately found on December 12, parked at an apartment complex at 8600 Research Boulevard. Her purse, along with $170 in cash, were missing. As authorities were investigating the area where the car was found, a resident of the apartments claimed they'd seen a woman fitting Sharon's description get out of the car with a man and walk up the stairs to a second-floor apartment. Police spoke to the occupant of the apartment but couldn't prove she'd been there. Police did find fingerprints in the car but stated there was not enough physical evidence to implicate anyone in a crime. Does this mean they couldn't identify whose prints they were? Or does it mean there is a person of interest but no evidence that a crime occurred? Was there any evidence that she had been Christmas shopping in her vehicle? Perhaps receipts from stores that would indicate whether she actually had been at Barton Creek Square? Any shopping bags? Was Sharon thought to have known anyone who lived in the apartment complex where her car was found? Sharon was an employee of the IRS in Austin at the time of her disappearance and aspired to go to medical school. She was already a registered nurse and had previously worked at Austin State Hospital, where she'd met her husband. He worked there also. Sharon's husband was given a polygraph, which he passed, and he was never considered a serious suspect. I wish there was a clearer timeline to follow. The Bee Cave Road area is somewhat remote and probably was more so in the 1980s. The other areas where she was known to be are, at least now, populated business areas and busy streets. A 21-year-old woman, Lauren Marie McCarty, disappeared from Austin a week after Sharon did. She was found deceased on December 22, 1984. She'd been the victim of a homicide and had been sexually assaulted. It was considered at the time that the two cases could be connected. Based on this 1998 article, it appears that there is either a suspect in Lauren's murder or that the case has been solved. I'm so far unable to find any details on this, however. I did find one odd tidbit relating to Lauren's death. When she was found, her hands were tied in front of her with a piece of white twine. Upon learning of this, John Mccully said that he had used a similar white twine to hold down the hood on Sharon's car. He stated that when Sharon's car was found, the twine was missing. John added that it wouldn't have slipped off, it had to be removed intentionally. I hope Sharon can be found soon.
Number 2.
Pinkie Mae Davis Heron went missing from Del Valle, Texas in September 1976. Most sites list her disappearance as having occurred in 1979, a discrepancy that Pinkie's daughter explained as follows. When Pinkie disappeared, both of her daughters were very young. A friend of Pinkie's attempted to report Pinkie missing, but law enforcement would not take a report. She wasn't officially reported missing until her younger daughter was an adult and she wasn't sure of the year but guessed 1979. Over time, from talking to family and friends, her daughter determined that she vanished in September 1976. Del Valle is a small suburb of Austin, although according to Wikipedia, Austin annexed some parts of Del Valle in 1990, so Del Valle used to be bigger. I am not sure if the part of Del Valle she went missing from is now considered Austin or not. Searches for Tex Golden Nugget show the location as both Del Valle and Austin, depending on the source. Knowing the correct year is very helpful in her case, and I will get to the reason shortly. Pinkie Mae was only 14 when she married in 1970. She had 2 children and was divorced from her husband in 1975. The day she went missing, she was seen driving to the Tex Golden Nugget, a motel and bar lounge in Del Valle where she was employed. A family friend saw her and said that Pinkie honked the horn and waved. She has never been seen again. Pinkie's profiles on missing person sites do not specify whether Pinkie's car was ever found. Pinkie's daughter confirmed that her car was indeed found at the Tex Golden Nugget and it appeared to have recently been cleaned. Pinkie normally had a bunch of stuff in her car and her family felt it was uncharacteristic of Pinkie to have the car so clean. Pinkie was a tomboy who enjoyed working on motorcycles and cars. She was also a drummer and played in area bands. Now for the reason the year of her disappearance is so important. 1979 would suggest an isolated incident. 1976, however, was the year that there was a string of young women who disappeared from the Austin area. All were around Pinkie's age, at least two of them, other than Pinkie, who is biracial black and Hispanic, were black. There was Jennifer Joyce Barton, age 21. She disappeared in May 1976 from the area of 11th and Waller in Austin. She was with a friend and they'd planned to see a movie. She stopped in a bar to get some money from friends there and ended up staying there. She was seen getting into a brown van with California plates, with two men. She was never seen again. Jennifer was apparently distraught at the time over the loss of a friend who was killed in February. I looked through death certificates. I found only one person in their 20s to 30s who was killed in February 1976. His name was Stephen Lelensky. He was a nurse at the Brackenridge Hospital emergency room and was killed inside the ER by a patron who was apparently mentally ill. Articles indicate that the person who killed Stephen had killed before. He had killed his own uncle in 1971 but was found not guilty by reason of insanity. I am not sure if Stephen Lelensky is the friend Jennifer was upset about. He is the only one I found in the Travis County death records, but it's very possible that Jennifer's friend died in a different county. Deborah K. Stewart, 19, also went missing in May 1976 from Austin. She was driving from Sears in South Austin, her place of employment, to a doctor's appointment at the University of Texas. She never arrived at her appointment and was never seen again. Deborah was ill at the time, suffering from a kidney ailment, although her illness would not have been apparent to people she encountered. Deborah's car was found shortly after, in East Austin. It has been suggested that Deborah's disappearance could be related to Jennifer Barton's, partly because of the timing, and also because both apparently knew people who hung out on 11th Street, although it is unknown whether the two knew each other. Another girl, Brenda Moore, disappeared in March 1976 at age 21. I do not know her race and have been unable to find a photograph of her. She was on her way to work at the Crestview nursing home in Austin, where she was a nurse's aide. Her car was found in East Austin, also 2 blocks away from where Deborah's had been found. She also reportedly suffered from depression. The fact that Jennifer and Deborah went missing within the same month were both young black women who frequented the same area does suggest that the two cases could be linked. The fact that Brenda's car was found 2 blocks from where Deborah's car was found suggests that these two could be linked. The fact that Brenda and Deborah were both last seen driving, as was Pinkie, suggests they could be linked also. Pinkie's daughter added that Pinkie did have ties to the area that Jennifer Barton and Deborah Stewart disappeared from. As a musician, she often performed at the bars in the area. As far as I know, no suspects have been named in any of the disappearances, and being that I do not know who Jennifer's friend was that was killed in February 1976, I have no idea if there was a suspect in that case. That was what I was trying to find out, to see if I could find any clues that could somehow connect to Pinkie. Oddly, while Travis County has 3 pages of male unidentified remains listed on NamUs and 1 set of remains that they are unsure of the gender, they do not have a single female. I wonder if they just aren't great about getting them entered or if they really don't have any. While Pinkie had been involved in a divorce in 1975, I found nothing to indicate that the marriage was abusive or that she was having problems with him at the time of her disappearance. However, it could be a possibility. When one goes missing while driving, it's safe to speculate that she stopped the car for some reason, possibly to pick up a stranger hitchhiker, possibly a carjacking, but much more likely she stopped for someone she knew. I also have no further information about the place where she worked, if she was having problems with anyone there, but there is always the possibility that she did arrive there and something happened. You'd think someone would remember seeing her though, if that were the case. There is a somewhat confusing entry for Pinkie on MyHeritage. I'm not too familiar with the site. It appears to be a genealogy site that pulls data from other genealogy sites and pieces it together so that a person's life events are all on one page. Some of the information on Pinkie is correct: the birth year, mother's name, and the marriage divorce involving Mr. Heron. Those match up to the actual records I found. A couple things I am unsure of. MyHeritage lists a father, while Pinkie's birth record only mentions a mother. MyHeritage states that she was married a second time to an individual other than Mr. Heron. I can find no record of that marriage anywhere, but strangely, I did come across that last name while researching. It is the last name of the person who owned the Tex Golden Nugget. And lastly, MyHeritage shows a death date year of 1989 for Pinkie. I could find no record of this in the SSDI or the Texas Death Index. It could be that she was declared deceased after having been missing for so long, but typically it would be listed in the indexes. So I am curious where this additional information came from. There was a Pinkie Mae Davis who died in 1989, but she was born in 1914, I think, so clearly not this Pinkie. I hope Pinkie is found soon. She seems to have a lot of family and friends who miss her terribly.
Number 3.
Nancy was last seen in Columbia Falls, Montana on April 21, 1976. She babysat for a neighborhood family that day and was last seen walking home afterwards. She never arrived at her residence and has never been heard from again. Nancy's parents were divorced and she lived with her grandmother at the time of her disappearance. Her loved ones described her as a normal teenager and a good student who was interested in the hippie counterculture. However, she was a chronic runaway and had traveled as far as Seattle, Washington and Los Angeles, California. The police would always find her and bring her home. The day Nancy disappeared, she had just been returned home after running away and spent a day in lockup in Kalispell, Montana, before being released to go back to her grandmother in Columbia Falls. It's possible she ran away again. One of her teachers thought they saw her at a bar in Anchorage, Alaska in May 1983, 7 years later, but this sighting was never confirmed. Less than a year before Nancy went missing, another teen girl, Robin Pettinato, disappeared from a town about 10 miles from Columbia Falls. She has never been found. It's theorized that there's some connection between the two cases, but this hasn't been proven. Both cases remain unsolved.
Number 4.
Karen Beth Kampsch, age 14, disappeared from Pasadena, Maryland in the winter of 1976. Karen had been a straight-A student in her younger years and had even skipped 6th grade. It was shortly after the skipping of 6th grade that she fell in with a rough crowd and started getting into trouble. There is also some indication that Karen was being abused by a family member during this time. As a result of the problems Karen was facing, she moved in with her grandmother, Olga Kampsch, on Wishing Rock Road in Pasadena. Olga Kampsch became aware that Karen was missing when she received a call from Karen's school, stating that she had not arrived at school that day. Olga checked the house, and Karen was not there. She had left all of her personal belongings, including her winter coat, in her bedroom. She was initially believed to have run away. Although Karen's father and grandmother had assured Karen's brother Tate that they had filed a missing persons report, no such record could be found when a now-adult Tate inquired in May 2007. A neighbor of Olga's does, however, recalled seeing police at the home when Karen was discovered missing. In 2007, following Tate's inquiry, police filed a new report and began an investigation. They interviewed several family members, some cooperative and others not so much. This was when police were led to believe that Karen had been abused and possibly killed by her abuser. They considered the abuser a person of interest, although they did not specify who this person is. Those scattered clues in various articles narrows it down considerably. Someone she would have left home to get away from, someone who would have access to her paternal grandmother's home. A massive 12-hour search was performed on Olga Kampsch's property in 2007. Olga died in 1999, and the home is occupied by other family members. There were rumors at the time that a body had been found, though police never confirmed this. Law enforcement did, however, state that items of interest were found in an abandoned well on the property. They did not elaborate on what was found, other than to say they were items one wouldn't expect to find in a well. They said they would be testing these items for any evidence. Following that flurry of activity, there has been nothing reported until May 2014, when a general plea was issued for anyone who might know anything to come forward. These 2014 reports made no mention of the 2007 search, the allegations of abuse, or the 2007 speculation by law enforcement that a family member of Karen's has been living with a secret for a very long time. The 2014 reports only state that her disappearance is suspicious in nature. Neither of Karen's parents, who are no longer married, have been willing to speak with reporters. Karen's brother Tate had kept a picture of Karen by his bedside, believing at the time that she'd run away, in the hopes that she would eventually contact him. I can't imagine what it must be like for Karen's brother, who learned that Karen's missing persons report didn't exist, therefore her case wasn't investigated, and then to learn that she most likely did not run away. I truly hope he will get the answers he needs.
Number 5.
Thora Chamberlain, age 14, disappeared from Campbell, California on November 2, 1945. Thora's last class of the day had just let out, and she was walking with friends along the sidewalk in front of the school, headed to the football field to watch a game. One of her friends reported that Thora stopped to talk to a man who was stopped at the curb. Thora motioned her friend to come over to the car. She explained to her friend that this man needed someone to babysit his younger siblings for a half hour. Her friend declined. Thora then told her friend that she would be back shortly and to save a seat for her. Thora got in the car and it drove away. She never came back. Thora's friend, who had been just outside the car, got a good look at the man and was able to give a detailed description of his clothing. She specifically described a hawk nose and some military-issue clothing and adornments, including a Purple Heart. Very soon after Thora's disappearance, Thomas Henry McMonigal packed up and traveled to Illinois, but the FBI was already considering him a person of interest, and they had him trailed as he rode buses to Illinois and back. Police arrested Thomas Henry McMonigal as he returned to San Francisco, and he eventually confessed to kidnapping and murdering Thora. He gave several differing accounts of how he'd killed her and where he disposed of her body. He stated that she'd been dumped off a cliff just north of Half Moon Bay, in an area known as Devil's Slide. He later stated that he'd buried her in a drainage ditch in a field adjacent to his workplace in Burlingame. He also stated that he'd placed her alongside the road just west of Campbell, only minutes from where she was last seen. Thora's socks were found near Half Moon Bay, and several of her other belongings were found in the field adjacent to his workplace. McMonigal stated that her clothing would be found buried in his backyard in San Mateo, but a search turned up nothing. McMonigal was sentenced to death and was executed in February 1948. Just prior to his execution, he wrote a note denying any involvement in Thora's kidnapping. Her body has never been found.